Our Computex 2025 coverage is made possible thanks to our amazing sponsors. We're here with Thermal Grizzly at Computex 2025, and I've got Joe with me, and basically we're going to go through all of, well, not all of, because there is a lot here, but the highlight products of the show. So let's start with the WireView, because we saw this one last year.
Yes, we saw WireView last year, and this is WireView Pro 2, which will be coming along later in the year. This adds a lot of stuff. So the first thing is pin-by-pin monitoring of the 12-volt high-power connector. So you'll have current reading for each of the pins. There are 6 shunt resistors in a very similar layout to the Astral.
Yep.
It will be able to log all of the data that it collects. So in the event of a failure, we'll be able to recover what happened and learn a little bit more about what's happening with the 12-volt high-power connector. Because although there's been a lot of failures, no one's ever watching, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing with that data, obviously that's important for the end user, but is there any way of you actually getting that data and using that as a collaborative or collective effort of all of the people who might have them failures? Do they have to send you that data? How would that work?
Yeah, so we would like to get the units returned when there has been a sort of catastrophic failure of the connector. And obviously, people will instantly know if they have big outliers and like a very poor current spread just when they first install it.
Okay. And in terms of obviously talking about catastrophic failure, there is a new feature with this one that could actually save either the graphics card or the system, or potentially even worse, it could save your house, right?
Right, so everything's being monitored, and you could set any one of the parameters to force a shutdown.
Yep.
So there's a little 2-pin connector there, and it will come with a splitter between the power button of the case and the motherboard.
Yep.
So the device can initiate a shutdown either softly or a hard shutdown with the system.
Okay, and we have got a bigger screen on here as well as a fan as well. So talk about them a little bit for us.
Yep, so this is a big color screen, so we can have a UI that shows all the pin parameters simultaneously. Because the little dot matrices would be too small to see pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, pin 4, all at the same time.
Yeah. Especially while there's something maybe going on, you haven't really got that focus and that time to be able to read each individual one while it's potentially setting a light or something.
Yeah, or again, we don't know exactly how things go wrong and how quickly they go wrong. Is it an imbalance that's always there, or does it just kind of crop up out of nowhere, or it's just when the GPU spikes? An instantaneous spike.
And I think that's the problem. Obviously, a lot of people, maybe vocal minorities and that, but we have heard a lot of problems about the 12-volt PWR connector. And the problem is no one at this point still knows exactly why there are problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear there's an imbalance of the current distributed between the cables. Yep. That would imply there's also an imbalance of contact resistance on the pins. Okay. And you get stuck in like a runaway scenario where one has a high resistance and takes less of the current, and then it starts to overload the others.
Gotcha. So when are we looking for availability on this, and have we got any kind of word on pricing as of yet?
So the word on the pricing is it'll be somewhere between 100 and 150 euros. Okay. And it should be in Q4 of this year.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it. Now, I want to come over to here because this is something completely new. Maybe not so much for you, but for the brand as a whole. So tell us what this is all about.
So this is the DeltaMate water cooling product line. It's been given one single name because we want to suggest there's a design unity between all the products. They all function together, and you can't build a loop with just one of them. No. So that all the products in this category will be named DeltaMate. There'll be GPU blocks, CPU blocks, and fittings that we can see here. Okay. And later we intend to make radiators, pumps, and all the usual.
So there's a pipeline of products that are going to come out so that people, I guess, can come to you and buy everything to make a full custom loop. But you've started with the graphics card for the Astral. Yeah. I'm guessing obviously other models, depending on the reaction in the market, other models could come at a later date. Yeah. But that's the one that you're starting with. Now, tell me about this then, because that is essentially an ROG Astral 5090 PCB, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, without any copper at all. Yep. But the fiberglass that outlined the holes exactly the same as a real Astral.
What's the point of this then?
So it was firstly made as a piece of packaging so we can ship the block assembled with the backplate, which is just nice to unbox that way. Yep. And we added the gold finger so you can install it directly into a motherboard. Yep. you know, graphics card block comes out of the box directly in a board. You can mock up your tubing, potentially pressure test a loop, leak test it with real coolant, whatever, and don't worry about your graphics card. And then when it's time to swap, all the instructions are printed on this board.
Yep, so it tells us exactly where we have to put the placement for the thermal pads, what thicknesses they are, and then I believe on the back there's also obviously all the bits just dictating what screws go where, if they've got the little cross on there, or if they're a hex, and it just makes things a little bit easy. But I guess once you're done with it, you can either put it back in the box or you could, I don't know, put it on a shelf and have that. And I guess probably the most important part of this is your name on there, right?
That's a good one.
Always.
Don't forget the thermal Grizzly overlords Sheik and Makita.
Yeah, definitely. On top of that, this is essentially a broken up part of it. So what have we actually got here, and why is this important? Because I've seen water blocks before, but not quite like this. This is a little bit different.
Right, so this is the main cold plate for the specific to the Astral.
Yep.
And this is the die cold plate, which is specific to the 5090.
Yep.
So the reason they're separated is these actually sit inside these surfaces. So imagine you're cutting this with a milling head. You can't actually fit inside to cut this in one pass.
Yep.
So that's why it's a separated piece. Otherwise, we would need really thick pads to lower the other surfaces.
Gotcha. And this has been fully sandblasted, but it's then been taken one step further. We were talking about this off camera. It's a really important process that could go wrong even if it was handled in between each step, right?
Yeah, if it was left out to oxidize, or if someone touched it, or anything that would set things off after it's been sandblasted, then we wouldn't end up with a perfect finished part in the end.
Gotcha.
Because all the contact surfaces for the VRAM, for the VRM, they're machined again after it's been sandblasted.
Gotcha. So in between the steps, this would be fully sandblasted, and then obviously these parts which make direct contact have to sort of move on to the next step. And yeah, I guess things could go wrong at any time if someone just touched it. You have to use like gloves and everything, right?
Yep.
Crazy. So this is just obviously the GPU block. We then have a variety of fittings which I know have had some, I guess, tweaks based on your experience in how a fitting should work and how a fitting should look and stuff like that. I said really, really simple with the branding in terms of the top on there, but there's actually a function behind that little logo there, isn't there?
Yep, so the little logos are covers, and underneath the covers there's an 8mm hex key, which is what you use to install the fitting, because it does not have any base at all. Yep. So it's not just like there's a tiny ring there, it's completely concealed. And that makes them far more modular, really decreases the size, and the male threads of these, when you connect them together, actually interlock entirely with the female threads. Yep. They mate together and lock the whole thing into one assembly. Yep. So it's not just relying on its steel spring to hold it together, but everything gets trapped.
Yep, and obviously reducing the size in it has allowed you to, well, make this little cube over here because everything fits together perfectly square.
Yeah, every dimension is equal. It's 21mm like across every face and every diameter of every fitting in the whole range.
Yep, and I have actually said off camera that I want one of them to sit on my desk, and it weighs a fair decent amount. And I mean, that weighs a lot, but the graphics card block, have we actually got the weight of the graphics card block?
It's about 2.5 kilos.
So it's not light.
Yeah, and then you need coolant and fittings and all the other stuff you hang off it.
Yeah. Okay. Now we do have a CPU block as well, which is this one. Some people might be a little bit confused with the name because of micro. Can you kind of explain why that's micro? Because that's a name we've heard before.
Right. So micro is actually a project that Roman initiated to improve the fin density that we were able to machine at Thermal Grizzly.
Gotcha.
So it's his pursuit of the microfin. Yep. And they actually reached a peak of 0.1mm slots, which is incredible. You can just fit a piece of paper in before you nickel plate it. Once you nickel plate it, the paper won't fit. That's how thin it is.
Wow, that is crazy. And so this is for AM5, this one though, isn't it? Is it going to be Intel on at a later date?
So this is an AM5 block for use with an IHS. It's not direct die. Yep. If there would be a direct die one, then it would be, again, DeltaMate micro direct die.
So we were talking, because obviously AMD is completely flat, Intel has a few more challenges with that, doesn't it? So that's where maybe, some tweaks need to be done to be able to actually get it to fit on there perfectly, right?
Yeah, the AM5 IHS is really flat, so we're hoping it will be quite fast to optimize the contact on this one. Yep. Thermal performance should also be good because it's a descendant of the micro direct die.
Okay.
And then Intel will follow up with later, and we're anticipating that we'll need to ship it with a contact frame and a reinforced backplate.
Yep.
So you can rebuild it all on the board, flatten the CPU out, and then we know it's much easier to make a flat CPU block.
Yep. Gotcha.
If we know everyone's CPU is flat, and then also the same block will work if you would have like a thermal Grizzly upgraded heat spreader.
Yep.
We don't need one block for when you use a heat spreader and one block for when you don't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Will this come in any other colors, or is it still kind of too early days to really speculate as to where things are going? I'm guessing you need to see how the market reacts to this first and then decide where things go from there in terms of other products and what colors you do and stuff like that.
I mean, we know with certainty that our audience prefers black.
Yep.
So we will
goes with everything, doesn't
right.
it?
So we'll make every single product in black first, at least, and try and get as many products in all the categories as we can before we start thinking about colors.
Gotcha. Obviously, if people do want a little bit of color, it's got addressable RGB on both the CPU block and the GPU block, so that allows them to spice things up a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, and everything's quite modular and open to customization. Like the CPU block, you can just remove the black cover, paint it, put it back.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And there's one more thing that I want to talk about, which is over there. So if we go back round, we can have a look at the bench table that we've got here, which I've used bench tables before from other brands, I'll be honest. None of them quite look like this. It was generally just, well, essentially a motherboard tray stood up. It was no different to using the motherboard box. So why is this one different, and why does it look like that?
So yeah, I mean, it comes from a similar place to that, because Roman only ever used a PCB with standoffs on.
Yep.
Just, as the simplest form of holding the motherboard.
Yeah, like EVGA used to bundle in with their motherboards. It was basically the PCB on little risers, and just allowed you to prop it up a little bit, so there was no issues.
Yep. So that would be his test bench of choice.
Yep.
But then he was thinking, if we have this board there, what else could it do? What could be practical for helping switch systems, helping test?
Yep.
So there's a whole bunch of features integrated on this.
Okay. What are the kind of key ones here? Because I'm seeing fan headers, I'm seeing USB Type-C, I'm seeing micro SD slots. It all seems a bit, I don't know, a bit weird compared to what you'd expect to see on, well, a test bench.
Yeah, so the micro SD slots are probably the most quirky one.
Yep.
But it's a very cheap and readily available source of small and actually quite big storage.
Yeah.
So it's very good for benchmark exports, for results, for validation.
Yep. Sometimes we know when it comes to if you're doing extreme levels of overclocking, you have split seconds to get screenshots and data somewhere else before the system might even shut down. So I'm guessing that's a quick fire way of doing that, right?
Yeah. And a way to load on simpler files and utilities over USB.
Yeah.
There's also two SATA LEDs that take their power from one PSU connector that serves the whole board.
Cool.
And they take their SATA data input from the two connectors on the side.
Yep.
The SD cards get their signal from the internal USB header, which also splits up into all the other USB headers that are around the board.
Okay.
So there's two on the front and two on the back that are anticipated for mouse and keyboard.
Yep.
And then, the Type-Cs. So these are actually powered also by the 6-pin power connector.
Yep.
So you can use them for charging, and they have a little bit more current than typical USB-C header, so you can use them for powering external devices like flow meters and sensors.
Something monitoring and things like that, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and with the fan headers, they're basically split into little zones, aren't they? So we've got one zone down here, there's another one at the top, another one on the side, then also a pump zone.
Yeah.
3 of them are basically the same in terms of the current, and the pump zone is slightly different, right?
Yeah, so they're all 1 amp headers, and pumps are 3 amp headers.
Okay.
Which is pretty overkill.
Yeah.
And basically how they work is they all have a toggle switch. So they will follow, in external mode, they'll follow the PWM input from the motherboard.
Yep.
And when you switch them into 50%, you override them with a 50% PWM signal or 100% PWM signal.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, we actually were so impressed with this, and of course it's got RGB because RGB makes everything better. But we were so impressed with this that we actually gave it an award, and so have some other outlets as well. So everyone is very, very impressed with this, but is it something that we're going to see at the show and never see again, or is this actually going to come to market, and if so, when?
No, it's definitely coming because there are hundreds of these PCBs ready at Thermal Grizzly HQ.
Okay.
So it should be along in July.
Okay, not too far away then.
Yep.
Have we got a price at the moment, or?
It will be €200.
Oh, okay, not bad at all.
Quite reasonable, and comes with all the screws, extras, brackets for radiators, and place for the PSU if you want it.
Yep.
Or if you would use it as Roman intends, put the feet directly on this and sit it down.
Yeah. I guess that's probably one of the most weird and wonderful parts of Thermal Grizzly is it always seems like Roman just makes products that he would use himself. So it's kind of, well, I want this, so let's make it.
Yes.
That's quite a cool thing to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like us if we need something in the office and it's like, oh, we're just, I don't know, 3D print it. Having that kind of flexibility to do that, he just takes it, I guess, one step further. And
yeah, if any type of engineering is necessary, he'll just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about because it might seem like a really simple thing, but for me, it's probably one of the most exciting products you've got. So down here we've got thermal pads, we've got the basic range, the advanced and the pro, but now we have high compression, and that's probably, I don't know, in my mind, such an important product for so many different use case scenarios. So can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yep, so it's in effect a much softer thermal pad.
Yep.
And it can be compressed from, the thickest one is 5mm, and it can be compressed all the way down to under 1mm.
Wow.
So it's very good for uneven parts of the PCB where you want to contact all of it.
Yep.
You know, like if you have a tall component, it's 1 or 2mm, but you still want to touch the board itself to get some heat out. That's really good for that. And also good if you just don't know what size you precisely need.
Yeah, we were actually saying this off camera that I've got a friend who's got a 3090 and it's got to a point where it gets very, very hot, so he's had to ramp all of his fans up, and that's just not a comfortable way to, you know, sit down at the end of the day and want to play a game. So I said, well, chuck me the graphics card, we'll take it off, we'll, you know, change the thermal paste, we'll change the thermal pads, but the problem that we then have is trying to find out what thickness of thermal pads, because that can make a huge difference. Yeah. So unless you can go directly to the manufacturer, in this case it's Pallet, and ask them, which most of the time they don't want to give that information out to the general sort of public, you can try and use feeler gauges, but when it's been clamped down for 3 years, it's just, you're never going to get a true representation of the thickness. Now I can use this to basically refresh these thermal pads, and it will, once it's clamped down, go down to kind of where we need it to and get that surface area amount that I guess is needed to be able to refresh his graphics card and hopefully not sound like a jet engine, or worse, having higher temperatures.
Yeah.
So that's a great use case scenario for that. So we even said we were going to make a video on it. So I guess, yeah, if you can send me some of them, we can make that happen and,
Will do,
and show the difference.
And in an even more extreme case, you might want to look at putties.
Yeah.
Where they will fit any gap. You know, you just put that on in balls on each component, and then
clamp it down, and it kind of just spreads itself out.
Yeah. And generally exceeding the performance of pads.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there you go. Lots of new products here from Thermal Grizzly. There's a lot more we could go through. We will actually have a written article on all this stuff. Everything from Cryonaut to Duranaut, Cryo Sheet, and even liquid metal. But yeah, definitely some cool stuff coming out. Really looking forward to that. I will warn you guys out there, it's heavy, very, very heavy. But actually let us know in the comments section, would you end up buying some of this water cooling gear from Thermal Grizzly? Is the WireView Pro 2 more important for you? Or could you make use of the Der8enchtable? Still trying to get my sort of head around the wording of that, Der8enchtable, but I get it, Der Bauer, that's sort of the way it is. Cheers, Joe. Appreciate you showing us around the booth and everything. Yep. Some really cool stuff coming up, and obviously we'll be featuring a lot of this on the channel as well as over on eTeknix.com in the next coming months as these products come out. So yeah, cheers guys. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.